Before we start this creepy story, hit that like button and subscribe if you're ready for some spine-chilling moments. Trust, you don't want to miss what happens next. It was a sunny Friday afternoon when the four of us decided to take the long weekend road trip. We'd been talking about it for months, escaping the grind, leaving the city behind, and heading into the mountains. The kind of trip where you leave your phone in the back seat, only checking it for photos, letting the road become your only focus. There's something about being far from civilization that makes you feel alive. You know, free. The plan was simple. Drive up through the winding roads of Northern California, hit up a remote campsite we found online, spend the weekend hiking, and, of course, enjoy the peace and quiet. Nothing out of the ordinary, just a group of friends looking to unwind. I should have known from the beginning that things weren't going to go as planned. Our group consisted of me, Sarah, Jason, and Emily. We had known each other for years, but this was the first time we'd all taken a trip together. The drive up was full of the usual chatter, talking about work, our crazy lives, reminiscing about old college days. Laughter echoed in the car as we made our way north, leaving the city lights behind. But as the hours passed, the roads began to change. The familiar highway turned into a narrow, winding lane with barely enough room for two cars to pass. No more rest stops or gas stations. No more signs of life. Just the forest on either side, thick and dark, pressing in around us. We didn't think much of it at first. After all, the campsite we'd found was deep in the mountains, away from civilization. But that's when things started to feel off. At first, it was the silence. The car radio, which had been playing non-stop, suddenly cut out. We tried fiddling with it, but it just wouldn't work. Jason tried to blame it on bad reception, but I could feel the unease creeping in. The air inside the car grew thicker, heavier. Then there were the road signs, strange, cryptic signs that we hadn't seen on any of the maps. Most were faded, barely legible. The first one we saw said, "Dead Man's Pass, proceed with caution." Emily laughed it off, thinking it was just some kind of joke or an old, corny sign left by a long-gone tourist trap. But as we kept driving, the signs kept coming. Some were even more unsettling. Lost Souls Hollow, turn back now, or last stop before hell, no exit for 50 miles. Jason was starting to get annoyed by what he called over-the-top signage, but I felt something else, a gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach that I couldn't shake. Something about this road, about this place, felt wrong. It wasn't just the signs, it was the atmosphere, the feeling that we were being watched, or maybe that we were in a place we weren't supposed to be. "I swear, this road isn't on the map," I said to Sarah, who was sitting beside me. She glanced at me, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "I mean, the way it's twisting and turning. It doesn't match up with the route we planned." I pulled out the map from the glove compartment and spread it out on my lap. "There's no road like this here." Emily piped up from the back. "Maybe your map is out of date." Jason chuckled. "We're fine, man. It's just a detour or something. Look, it's all part of the adventure." But his voice was less certain now, and I could tell he was starting to feel it too. We pressed on. The road seemed endless, winding in ways that didn't make sense. I glanced up at the rearview mirror. The road behind us was empty. No other cars. No signs of life. Just the thick, dark woods. The feeling in the pit of my stomach deepened. It wasn't long before we passed a rusted, abandoned car on the side of the road. The tires were flat, and the windows were shattered. A chill ran through me as we drove by, the remnants of what used to be someone's vehicle sitting eerily on the side of the road. "We should stop and check that out," Jason said, his voice low and intrigued. "Are you serious?" Sarah snapped. "It's just some old junked car. Let's keep going." But something about it felt like a warning. I could feel my pulse quickening as I pressed my foot harder on the gas pedal, hoping we'd be out of whatever this was soon. But the road seemed to stretch on forever, and the air felt heavier with every mile. Finally, we came to a fork in the road. There was a dilapidated wooden sign pointing to the left, barely readable, its paint peeling off. The right side led into thick woods. We were almost out of gas, and we knew we couldn't make it much farther without a fuel stop. I pulled over. The empty road before us felt unnervingly silent. No other cars, no distant sounds of wildlife, not even a breeze through the trees. "We need to make a decision here," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Left or right?" Emily stared out of the window, the dark woods looming before her. "Left," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It looks like it leads somewhere." We took the left road, not knowing it was the last decision we'd ever make without consequences. "All right, Quick pause before we get to the terrifying part. If you're into stories that make you sleep with one eye open, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. And if you're brave enough, let's dive right into this nightmare together. We'd been driving for what felt like hours, but the road just kept going. No sign of any civilization, just endless twists and turns through trees that seemed to crowd in on us more with each mile. My hands gripped the steering wheel a little too tightly, and every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was behind us. "Look at this place," Jason muttered, clearly uncomfortable now. "I'm telling you, we've been on this road for way too long. We should have seen something by now." I glanced at the gas gauge. We had just over a quarter tank left, but we weren't sure how much farther we could go before we ran out. There had been no signs for gas stations or any signs of life for miles. It was as though the world had disappeared around us. "I'm starting to think we took the wrong turn," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Maybe we should go back." I thought about it, but the road behind us was even darker now, and I wasn't sure we'd be able to retrace our steps. The forest had closed in on both sides of the road, and the air outside felt damp and thick, like a storm was coming, though the sky was clear. Just then, something on the side of the road caught my eye. A figure, standing just off the road, hidden in the trees. I slammed on the brakes, my heart racing. "What the hell?" I said, voice shaking. "Did you guys see that?" Everyone went silent, staring at the figure in disbelief. It was a man, standing motionless, staring directly at us. His clothes were ragged, and his skin looked pale and sickly, like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. His hair was long and matted, and his face was expressionless. He didn't move, just stood there watching us as we passed. "Is that a person?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, but my stomach twisted. The whole situation felt wrong. It was like he didn't belong here, like he had no business being on this road. "I'm pulling over," Jason said suddenly, unbuckling his seatbelt. "We need to ask him for directions or something. This is too weird." "No," I said quickly, grabbing his arm. "Don't. We don't know who he is. He could be." But Jason was already opening the door. "He's just a guy." "Man, relax." He stepped out of the car and walked toward the figure. The rest of us watched, a sense of unease settling over us like a heavy blanket. The man didn't react. He just kept standing there, his eyes fixed on us. My breath hitched as I felt the weight of his stare even from the car. "Jason, get back in the car," Sarah called out, her voice panicked. But Jason didn't respond. He was still walking toward the man, who now seemed even more distant, almost otherworldly, like he was standing in the shadow of something I couldn't quite place. I wanted to roll down the window and shout at him, but I was paralyzed with fear. It felt like time had slowed down. I watched Jason approach the man, his footsteps crunching softly on the dirt as he drew closer. Suddenly, the man turned around slowly, unnervingly slow, and began to walk into the trees, disappearing without a sound. Jason stopped in his tracks, clearly confused. "What the hell?" Jason muttered, looking back at us, but before he could say anything else, the sound of something heavy moving in the brush behind him sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know what it was, but it wasn't an animal. It sounded wrong. The leaves rustled violently, and a twig snapped. "Jason!" I shouted, panic rising in my throat. He turned quickly and sprinted back toward the car. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I watched him run, but I couldn't move, couldn't look away from the trees where the man had just been. Jason slid into the car, slamming the door behind him. His face was pale. "I don't know what the hell that was, but I'm done." "What happened?" Sarah asked, her voice frantic. "I don't know. He just turned and walked away like he wasn't even real." I don't know what to say. We all sat in silence for a moment, the tension palpable, before Emily finally spoke. "Maybe he was just a homeless guy or something. I mean, people live in the woods. He probably just wanted help." Jason shook his head. No way. He wasn't acting like any homeless person I've ever seen. That guy. It wasn't right. Something was off about him. "Okay, let's just go," I said, my voice tight. "We'll figure it out later. We need to keep moving before we run out of gas." The road ahead looked the same, silent, desolate, and empty. It didn't feel like we were on a highway anymore, just a narrow path leading nowhere. I put the car in gear and pressed the gas pedal, eager to to put distance between us and whatever we had just encountered, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being followed. The trees loomed closer now, and the road seemed to get darker with every passing minute. As we rounded a bend, I saw something up ahead, a shape, moving across the road. I slammed on the brakes. Another figure, but this one wasn't standing still. It was moving fast. "Who the hell is that?" Jason said, his voice shaking. This time, there was no doubt. It was another person, someone running across the road in the same direction we were heading. A man, his face obscured by the shadows, but his movements were frantic, like he was running from something. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My foot hovered over the brake, but I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to let whatever that was catch up to us. "Go!" Emily shouted. "Drive. Now!" But it was too late. The man veered off the road and disappeared into the trees, vanishing just as quickly as he had appeared. I couldn't explain it, couldn't make sense of it. It was like the road was playing tricks on us, distorting our reality. We kept driving, the silence in the car oppressive, until something else happened, something worse. The headlights flickered, and then nothing. The car died. The engine cut out completely. The car came to a screeching halt. The engine sputtered once, then fell completely silent. My heart raced. I turned the key again. Nothing. The dashboard lights were dead. The radio? Silent. Even the headlights faded into a dull, eerie glow, then shut off completely. "Are you kidding me?" Jason's voice was sharp, panic setting in. "We're out of gas? Seriously?" "I don't think so," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I checked the fuel gauge, still a quarter of a tank. "It's not the gas, it's something else." A heavy silence fell over the car. The world outside felt like it was closing in on us, the trees pressing in from all sides. The night had fallen so fast that I could barely make out the shapes of the forest, but I could feel the weight of it, the dark, oppressive presence surrounding us. "We're not going to be able to start the car again?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "I'll try again." I turned the key, but the engine wouldn't even turn over. It was completely dead. I sighed, leaning back in my seat, feeling the weight of the situation crash down on me. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere. There was no signal on our phones, no other cars, no houses, just us in the darkness of the forest. "Okay, so what now?" Jason's voice wavered. "We're out of options. We need to figure out what happened first." I said. I didn't know what to think. The whole thing felt so wrong. Everything about this place, this road, it felt like it was toying with us, like we weren't supposed to be here. "We'll need to check the engine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Maybe something's loose." "I'll take a look." I grabbed the flashlight from the glove compartment and stepped out of the car. The night air was colder than I expected, biting at my skin. I couldn't help but glance nervously at the dark shapes of the trees surrounding us, their gnarled branches reaching out like fingers. The headlights were dead, leaving the road in almost complete darkness. The flashlight's beam barely cut through the gloom, but it was enough for me to see the road ahead. No signs of anything, except the unsettling silence. As I popped the hood and crouched to check the engine, a low, distant sound reached my ears, a scraping noise, like metal scraping against metal, echoing through the trees. It was faint, but unmistakable. I froze. The sound was close enough to make my pulse race, yet it didn't seem to be coming from anywhere specific. "Do you hear that?" I called back to the others. "What?" Jason asked, his voice coming from the car. "What's going on?" "I don't know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I thought I heard something." "Just stay in the car." I continued to inspect the engine, though my mind was racing. I had no idea what was wrong. The car's electrical systems were fine. The battery was good. There was nothing obvious. I turned back to the car and was about to tell the others when I heard it again, that scraping sound, and this time, it was much closer. I snapped my head toward the sound, heart hammering in my chest. Through the darkness, I could just make out movement, a figure, barely visible, walking toward us from the trees. "Guys," I shouted, "there's someone out there." The others scrambled out of the car, their faces pale with fear. We all stood there, watching as the figure emerged from the darkness, moving slowly but steadily. It was a man, tall, wearing a long coat, but his face was covered by the shadows. The scraping sound seemed to be coming from the direction of the trees, as if the man was dragging something heavy across the ground. The flashlight's beam flickered as I pointed it at him, but it wasn't enough to make out his features. He was far too still, too quiet. "Who the hell are you?" Jason called out, his voice louder now, but still still edged with fear. The man didn't answer. He didn't even stop. He just kept moving, slowly but surely, his steps deliberate and unnerving. It was as if he didn't care about us, like he had no reason to be afraid. "Is he real?" Emily whispered, clutching Sarah's arm. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her voice quivering. "What the hell is he doing out here?" I didn't wait any longer. I grabbed Jason's arm. "Get back in the car," I said urgently. "Now." But it was too late. The man was right next to us now, dragging something along the ground with a horrible, grating sound. "Please, get in the car," I repeated, my voice rising with panic. The man stopped. He was standing right in front of us now, the darkness almost swallowing him whole. His face was obscured, but his eyes, I saw his eyes glinting in the light, staring directly at us, and there was something in those eyes, something that made me feel like we were in the presence of something far darker than we could ever understand. Then, without a word, he raised his arm, and in his hand was a rusty, blood-stained machete. I didn't even think. I shoved Jason toward the car, and we all scrambled inside. I slammed the door, locking it as quickly as I could. The engine still wouldn't turn over. The man stood there, staring at us through the window. His breathing was slow and steady, but it was the sound of his footsteps dragging something heavy that haunted me. I dared to glance out the side mirror, and that's when I saw it. Behind him, a trail of what looked like blood smeared across the dirt. It was fresh. The man tilted his head slightly, as if observing us, waiting. Then, without warning, he turned and vanished back into the trees. We didn't speak for a long time. There was nothing to say. The fear, the uncertainty, it was all consuming. Finally, Jason broke the silence. "What the hell was that? What do we do now?" But even as he asked, I didn't know. None of us did. The night seemed to stretch on forever. We were trapped in the dark, our only hope of survival lying in the car, an unreliable hunk of metal with no engine and no way out. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I saw something else in the rearview mirror, a pair of headlights moving toward us from the direction we had come. I felt my breath catch as the headlights grew brighter in the rearview mirror. They weren't just distant, they were moving toward us, fast. "Is that someone else out here?" Sarah's voice trembled as she leaned forward, trying to get a better look through the rear window. "Please tell me that's someone who can help." But I couldn't bring myself to speak. I couldn't even breathe. The headlights were growing closer, the soft hum of an engine faint but unmistakable. Whoever it was, they were coming fast, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that we hadn't seen another car on this road in hours, maybe longer. The whole night had felt like a nightmare, one that just kept stretching further and further. "Is it a truck? A patrol car?" Jason asked, his voice high with a thread of hope. "I don't know," I muttered, barely able to process what was happening. "It's too dark to tell." The light was blinding now, casting long shadows on the trees as the vehicle drew closer. It had to be another car. What else could it be? But something in my gut told me it wasn't a friendly driver. "Shut the hell up, all of you," I said quietly, trying to keep calm as my heart raced in my chest. "Just listen." The engine sound grew louder. I checked the mirror again, heart pounding. It was no ordinary car. There was something wrong about it. The headlights were blinding, but there was a strange, unsettling hum that didn't quite match the sound of a typical engine. "Stop the car," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "No," I said firmly. "We need to keep moving." I tried the engine again. Still nothing. It was dead. The headlights were so close now I could see the outline of the vehicle, a dark silhouette, too tall and too bulky to be a typical sedan. It looked like an old truck, rusted and battered, but the headlights, they were blinding, almost too bright, as if they were focused too intensely, like something was wrong with the lights themselves. Then, in a sickening twist, I saw the headlights flicker for a second, just long enough for me to see what was behind the truck. The figure, the man from the woods, the one with the machete. He was standing at the rear of the truck, his body half shrouded in darkness, and then the lights went out. The night plunged into total darkness. I held my breath. In that split second, I felt a wave of terror like I had never felt before. It was as if time stopped. I couldn't see anything, but I knew that the figure was still out there, waiting, watching. "Turn the lights back on," Jason hissed, his voice tight with panic. "What the hell are we doing?" "Turn them back on." I fumbled with the controls, my fingers shaking, but nothing happened. The car was dead. We were completely stuck. Then, without warning, the silence was broken by a loud, loud, shrill sound, a scream, or maybe a shout. I couldn't tell. It echoed through the trees, so sharp and unnatural that it sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't a person. It sounded more like something else, something wild. And that's when I realized the truth. We weren't alone. The truck's engine roared back to life, and the headlights flared back on, but there was no one inside. The truck was moving on its own, slowly creeping toward us, like a predator closing in on its prey. I could hear the low rumble of the engine, but there was no driver, just the truck. And then, a voice, low, gravelly, and bone-chilling, came from somewhere behind us. "You should have left when you had the chance." I whirled around, searching the darkness, but saw nothing. That voice wasn't from the truck, it came from deep in the woods. "Did you hear that?" Emily whispered, her voice shaking with fear. "Someone's out there, I swear." I heard it. I nodded, but I didn't know what to say. We were trapped, out of gas, out of options, and the only thing surrounding us now was a black abyss of trees and shadows. "Maybe we should run," Jason said, his voice cracking. "Maybe we can make it on foot." "Are you crazy?" I snapped. "You think we can just run through that forest in the dark? Then what the hell do we do?" Jason shouted. I didn't have an answer. I had no idea what to do. Then, suddenly, the truck lurched forward with a loud screech. It wasn't driving toward us, no, it was driving through the trees, barreling straight at us. I instinctively slammed the car into reverse, my hands shaking as I tried to get us moving, but we were stuck. We were trapped between the truck and the trees. The steering wheel jerked in my hands, the tires spinning uselessly as the truck continued to barrel toward us. "Move, damn it!" Jason screamed, his voice wild with panic. "Move, move!" But we couldn't. We were stuck. We were sitting ducks. The truck's light shone brighter now, closing in on us as if it was trying to force us into the trees. I could hear the tires of the truck grinding against the dirt as it sped forward. The truck was going to hit us, and then, right before the truck made contact, a figure dashed up from the darkness and leaped onto the hood of the car. A heavy weight landed on the windshield with a sickening thud. I gasped and slammed my foot on the brake. It was him, the man with the machete. His face was twisted in an expression of pure rage as he smashed the blade against the glass. The windshield cracked, spiderwebbing out in 100 different directions. "Get out of the car!" the voice screamed. The man's face twisted in fury. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My mind was frozen. "Get out now!" Jason screamed, and in that moment of pure panic, everything seemed to unravel. The truck came to a stop, and the figure with the machete raised his blade higher, ready to strike, but before he could bring it down, the ground beneath us shook, a deep, ominous rumble coming from beneath the car. And then, all at once, the truck's headlights went out. The headlights of the truck went out. It was as if the entire world had gone silent. The rumbling stopped. The night was still. I stared out the windshield, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The man with the machete was still standing there, poised like a predator. But now he wasn't moving. Not a single muscle twitched. And then, in the eerie silence, I heard it. A low, guttural growl coming from the trees. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It wasn't a bear or some wild animal. It was something else. Something much darker. "What the hell was that?" Jason whispered, his voice hoarse. Before I could answer, the ground beneath the car shook again, harder this time. It wasn't just the truck. The earth itself felt like it was moving. "We need to get out of here. Now," Sarah said, her voice cracking with fear. I didn't argue. I knew we couldn't stay here, not with whatever that was moving through the trees. I tried the engine again. The car sputtered, then started barely. The lights flickered back on, casting long shadows on the trees. "Move! Go! Go!" Jason screamed. I slammed my foot on the gas, jerking the car forward. The tires screeched as I swerved, barely avoiding the truck. But I wasn't looking at the truck anymore. I was looking ahead, at the trees. The shadows in the woods had shifted, and something was moving in the darkness, following us. I slammed my foot harder on the accelerator. The trees blurred past us, too fast, too close. I could hear the growling again, louder now, as if it was closing closing in on us. "Don't look back," I muttered under my breath, though I knew it was a lie. We had to know what was chasing us, but there was no time to look back. The road ahead was a twisted mess of curves, and the headlights illuminated nothing but darkness. The forest seemed to press in on us, as if the trees were alive, reaching for the car. And then I saw something else, a figure in the middle of the road, standing still, watching us. It was the man with the machete, but he wasn't alone. There were more figures behind him, dozens of them, all standing in the road, blocking our way. I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a stop. We were completely surrounded. The figures stepped forward. There were no words, no sound, just the scraping of metal against metal as the man with the machete slowly raised his weapon. I turned to the others. "This is it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "This is how it ends." But then, something happened. The truck behind us roared to life again, the headlights blinding us as the engine revved. The figures in the road flinched, as if startled by the sound. And then, without warning, the truck tore forward, its tires screeching, the engine growling as it smashed into the group of figures. There was a moment of chaos, shouting, bodies hitting the ground, a burst of lights and dust. The truck slammed into the people with no hesitation, no remorse. It was like it was trying to crush them, to push them out of the way. We watched, frozen in shock, as the truck spun out of control. The figures scattered, some running off into the woods, others collapsing under the weight of the truck. But the man with the machete, he didn't move. He just stood there, watching, his face twisted with that same expressionless look. Then, as if he had decided that his job was done, he turned, walking back toward the trees without a single glance at us. We didn't wait to see where he went. I slammed the car into gear, the tires screeching as we sped past the wreckage. The truck was gone now, consumed by the chaos it had created. The road in front of us seemed clear. The figures were no longer there. It was as if they had never been. We didn't stop. We didn't look back. The car lurched forward, and the trees began to thin. We were leaving the forest behind. We drove for hours, not speaking, each of us too afraid to break the silence. The darkness outside was thick, but as we continued down the road, we saw lights in the distance. A small town. It wasn't much, just a few lights flickering in the distance, but it was something. It felt like safety. We pulled into a gas station, still shaken, still silent. As the car came to a stop, I couldn't help but look out the window one last time, searching the dark trees. There was nothing, just the quiet rustle of leaves in the wind. But as I got out of the car, something caught my eye. A small, dark shape on the ground. A machete. I felt a chill run through me as I picked it up, staring at the rusted blade, covered in dried blood. And then, I saw something else, written on the side of the blade, in crude, jagged letters. "You shouldn't have come." I dropped the machete, my hands trembling. We didn't stay long. We didn't even fill up the gas tank. We left that town behind, and we never spoke of it again. If you enjoyed this terrifying story, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for more spine-chilling content. Your support helps the video reach more viewers and brings even more horror to your screen.